Right, I'm gonna give a tutorial on how to do the knight and bishop checkmate. It's actually a lot easier than it seems. There are a lot of steps to remember, but they're not too hard to remember once you get it done once or twice. Okay, so the first step, you need to recognize that you want the king in the same colored corner as the bishop. So if you have a dark squared bishop, the king has to go to either a1 or h8. In this case, I want him to go to h8, because that seems easier, because the king's already over there, right? So usually the opponent will always try to run towards the light square corners to avoid the checkmate. So knowing this, you use it to your advantage. The first step is always to try to corral him towards that light squared corner. There's no set technique for this. You can just use your intuition and the fact that your opponent is trying to help you. So centralize your king, bring your pieces in slowly, take up the squares, play waiting moves like here if you have to. You see, king and bishop controls the escape squares to move here. Okay, now I'll stop. Right, this is a crucial step. You want this bishop to be controlling the h2 b8 diagonal, and you want the knight to be able to control the c7 square, right? That's what you want to do. So the king really, if he wants to stay near this corner, he can only move along these two squares, b7 and a7. You want to use the knight to control c7, so it frees the bishop from that diagonal that controls that square. And it can slide here to take up the a7 square. King has no more squares and has to move back. In this case, you don't take opposition. You move here. See, when you move that king here, right, the bishop controls a7 still, so the king can escape that way. King tries to hide in the corner. You use the knight to control that square. Okay, this is the second step after corralling the king to that corner, right? And now the technique is established. You just have to memorize these steps from now on. The first part you could use intuition, but not here. Knight has to control this square. Bishop has to play a waiting move and then come to a7 to control b8. And then the king has to move this way. You pull the knight back to control e7. Now if the king, you move the king in front. If the king were to move back to c8, right, you need to use the W maneuver, which means basically you move your knight to e7 to control c8, and since your king is on d8, has to move to e8, and then you move your bishop in, control the d8 square. But in this case, the king ran out, so he helped us a little bit. He saved a few of our moves. Okay, now this is the third step, right? The crucial move here is to move the knight to d7. I mean to e7. When the king tries to run, you have to move the bishop to this c3 h6 diagonal, right? Why is that? Is that it controls these dark squares along that diagonal, while the knight controls f5 and g6. it creates this W-shaped wall that the king cannot escape from. Okay. And then you move the bishop 1 square by 1 square, and now the king is stuck here. Okay, and then right. Also note, if the king tries to run here while you're doing this, it doesn't matter. Cause if the king tries to run to d8 again, right, the knight controls c8 and the king controls c7, so it can run that way. So you patiently move the bishop still to that this g5 square, play a waiting move, and when you move the knight, then the bishop and king prevents him from running away from this corner, and then you can move the bishop, just slide it back to g5 after that waiting move, and then the result is the same. Yeah. So when you get here, right, the fourth step is this knight maneuver. When you need to pull the knight back to this square and then bring it around to this square. Now the reason why is that g6 square right in front of the bishop is clearly undefended. The king could slip out of it, but you can recognize that the king cannot reach it, so when you reroute, you have time to reroute the knight to control that square. Yeah. Okay, now that he's here, another king move in front, tighten the net even further. Now the fifth step is this knight maneuver here. Bring it here, play a waiting move. If the king were to move back in front of the bishop here, you gotta checkmate with the knight, so you gotta move. Then it's very simple here. The knight and bishop control the escape squares, so the king only has 3 squares here. Now the king only has 2 squares once you play this move. Deliver 2 checks and that's mate.